everyone. Today we have our another new episode. This is very important episode because we will discuss on embrace uncertainty. And you know that what happened in Turkey and Syria, many people died, and before that death, they do not know what will happen. So we have our very world famous speaker, Professor Donald, and hopefully we will get he's my personal mentors. So hopefully our audience will get very strong guidelines. You know, World Talent Economy Forum, we are working with six different cities in Bangladesh and India. We have around 10 million people, those who joining in World Talent Economy Forum ecosystem, and we are uplifting the communities. So all of our episodes will be very effective for our audience. Professor Donald, what you want to share about embrace uncertainty?
Uncertainty. Well, I think there's an old saying that the only thing certain is change, and so I think the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. That we like to think that we can figure out what's going to go on and plan things and have our plans go completely the way we'd like them to go. But I think if any of us just sit and think about our lives for a second or two, we'll realize that it doesn't ever work that way. We might need to get someplace and the bus is late. It might be that there's a rainstorm, the power goes out, our internet connection doesn't work. I mean, the world is full of little uncertainties that we can't do anything about. And interestingly enough, the way our brain works is that we tend to forget those things. It's like, in a way, it's like we're making a photograph of reality, and then we can fix that photo. Our brain is like Photoshop that takes that picture of reality and fills it out. There's a psychological term for it's called I'll remember it in a second, but I wasn't really thinking about that. But basically what happens is that let's see how to put this. People have a tendency to take credit for things that they didn't actually do. So basically what happens is that there's been research that's shown that when you have something good happen to you that happened by luck, you have a tendency to say that you actually did it yourself. And there's an actually famous paper called, and it's Heads I Win, Tails You Lose, it's called, by a psychologist named Ellen Langer at Harvard. And she set up some experiments where she basically put people in situations where the circumstances were just random, and then asked retrospectively whether or not the person had actually decided that they were going to have things come out that way. And if things went right, they'd say, yes, things came out that way. But if they didn't come out right, they go, no, that's just random chance. And the reason I'm saying this is because uncertainty is there. It's everywhere. In fact, one of the greatest logicians ever, a guy named Charles Sanders Peirce, who invented a lot of modern logic, had a name. I just saw it for the first time the other day, but it was Taoism, which is the view that you can't think about the universe, you can't think about logic without having uncertainty built into it. because uncertainty is the only thing that's certain. And I want to keep going with this because um, when we look at somebody like Steve Jobs, or we look at one of these people, that Elon Musk, these great men who really changed the world. We Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, whoever, the great people who really changed the world. We we look at what they've accomplished, and we believe that they accomplished this completely by their own mind and will. Like they had these brilliant ideas, and then they took these brilliant ideas and they did things with them, and because they did things with them, but we don't see how incredibly much luck there is involved in that. Because I was really interested in computers at the same time as Steve Jobs, but I lived in a place where to even buy, I mean, I was just a little kid. So to even buy any of the parts to build a computer or anything out like that was so much more money than I had. I couldn't do it. I mean, I read science books about how to do it. I knew how to do it. I knew I wanted to build a laser. I had instructions on how to build it, but I just couldn't afford the stuff to be able to do it. And but Steve Jobs and Wozniak lived in Palo Alto, and they were fairly wealthy. And in Palo Alto, they could just get scraps from companies, Stanford or wherever else like that, and then they could put these things together. And so that's luck. I mean, where you're born is uncertain. What family you're born to is uncertain. What religion you're born into is uncertain. I mean, you don't know many people that were born as Christians that switch to becoming Muslims, or the other way around. I mean, people usually, they just keep going in whatever religion that they were born in. So a lot of what seems to us to be like fixed and certain is really not at all. It's just a matter of chance and luck. And so I think that one thing that I sometimes say to people, they say, "Oh man, I'm thinking, oh, this could go wrong, and that could go wrong, and that could go wrong, and I've really got to figure out exactly the path that I'm going to take so that everything can go right." And I say to them, you can think of every single solitary thing that can go wrong, and guaranteed something will go wrong, but it won't be any of the things you thought of. It'll be something entirely different, and you'll deal with it. So I think where I'm going with all of this is that uncertainty is something that we're constantly living with. It's part of life. And I was fortunate enough to get to know this guy named James March. He's gone now, but he was a good friend and colleague of Herbert Simons, who won the Nobel Prize for I think for developing behavioral economics. And Jim March wrote a book called A Primer on Decision Making. And I think they credit Simon with this, but I'm not sure if it was Simon or March that really came up with the idea of satisfying, satisfying. Yeah. So anyway, the whole idea is we don't make decisions based on knowledge, because everything that we want to know to make a decision, there's always more we could know. So let's just say you want to buy a car, and you look in the web, and you look at consumers reports, and you look at every car magazine, and you find out that that some car is the best car that you could possibly buy. It's got the best ratings of every car that you could possibly buy. So then you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to buy that car because it's the best car. But the truth is, every car isn't going to be exactly the same. I mean, sometimes there could be a manufacturing error in that car that makes it not quite as good as the other cars in the other runs of that same car. So you really need to get down to it. You really need to have more information. You have to know, well, when was the manufacturing the most perfect? When was everybody that was assembling it the most wide awake and doing the best possible job? You don't want they're not all exactly the same. You don't you could keep going trying to get more and more information about something, and eventually you could never really make a decision about anything. And so what we do instead is we just have to give up and just say, well, that's good enough. I mean, it'll do the job, because we just have to eventually just, you know, a pick a path and go with it. And so we and that's a way of dealing with the fact that dealing with uncertainty. That's a way that we deal with uncertainty. That's a path to dealing with uncertainty. So I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to pause for a minute and let Sharif take over for a bit. And what I'm going to say is that where I'm really going in this first part of what I'm saying is that we have an illusion of certainty sometimes, and we imagine that things are more ordered than they actually are, because we forget all the things that went wrong, and we remember what the steps that got us there, and forget all the little problems that happen along the way. And that's why we have this illusion that when things happen by luck, we have an illusion that we actually did them by our will. I mean, if anybody's ever gambled out there, I don't gamble myself, but when you gamble, sometimes I have a little, but you get this illusion that you win once and then you win again, and you think to yourself, well, I'm doing this. I've got some magic thing I'm doing. I'm making myself win. You know, I'm on a roll. I'm on a streak. And that's why people gamble, because they get that feeling, but it's not. It's an illusion. And so the interesting thing about uncertainty that I want to, you know, continue with on this session is that that certainty is an illusion, and uncertainty is the underlying reality of everything we live in.
Thank you.
Say
This
that for
is
now.
very interesting dialogue you are discussing right now. Mr. Donald, do you want to share some of your personal experience, how you overcome from the uncertainties? Specifically, our audience have huge interest about Silicon Valley. So if you share some corporate experience or something, maybe it will be valuable for our audience.
Oh. Well, I mean, like if you go into a company, like I was working for a few years for a company called NetApp, which does high-end storage devices, and now they're doing cloud stuff. But we had a system, and the cheapest one you could buy was about $150,000. I mean, it wasn't for consumers; it was just for banks and large organizations that needed to have storage that basically was so reliable that you would never lose anything. And so there was a lot of redundancy and other kinds of things to make that happen. But when we upgraded it and we made a new system, when you're interacting between a company that's providing that infrastructure, something like a bank, so, major banks were their customers. And so inside of the bank, all of the employees of the bank that use that system have been trained on the system that they have right now. And all of their processes are using the system that they have right now. So upgrading the system requires the employees to be retrained. It requires the old hardware to be replaced with the new hardware. And there's going to be many differences. So there has to be this process of changing from the old to the new. So you can't just do that overnight. I mean, you can't just, say everybody, hey, we're going to close the bank for a couple of days and we're going to ship out all the old equipment and bring in the new equipment. And and the bank has such a responsibility to its customers. They would be nuts if they didn't test the system very, very, very thoroughly to make sure it worked. So they need to develop a schedule, a process where they're going to do a little piece here and then another little piece and another little piece and another little piece, and slowly but surely move from one to the other. But they can't start that process until the company that's delivering the hardware and software, delivering the new systems, has finished. And I don't know if you've paid attention, but how often do companies release what they say they're going to release at the time they say they're originally going to release it? I mean, how long have we been waiting for completely autonomous self-driving cars from Elon Musk? He says 2 years every time you ask him. It's been 10 years and he's been saying, or 5 years at least, he's been saying, well, it's 2 years away. And it doesn't seem to be any closer than it was. So you can't really go out and count on something that I mean, just in the software development process, there's a huge amount of uncertainty because you don't know while you're doing it if there's so many pieces to a system that if one of the pieces in the system that you're getting from somebody else, you don't have any control over. You're buying the actual disks themselves from somebody else. You don't make the disks. You're buying the network cards from somebody else. You don't make the network cards. And then you find some place where they've documented it incorrectly, or it doesn't perform in the way that you believe that it was going to perform. That can set the release of this whole gigantic billions of dollar systems back. And so you can't predict when exactly it's going to come out. So every process like that has to have uncertainty built into it. So the way to deal with uncertainty in processes and cases like that is that you have to be very incremental. You have to say, okay, well, do we have something that's good enough to start trying to put it in place and make a little test place so that we can start testing what we have right now and finding what the problems are. But the customers don't see it. We just test it ourselves. It's all internal. We have pretend customers. We have pretend scenario. We have scenarios that allow us to be able to test the system. And so the customer has to work, and the vendor have to work closely together with each other, where the vendor says to the best of their knowledge when it's going to be delivered, and then the customer has to be. They can't say, well, if you don't deliver it perfectly, and it's completely done, and we're not going to buy it, because that isn't going to wind up happening. They're going to have to work together, and that's why you have beta releases and the general releases and all the stages of releases, because your customer might get a beta release and then start working on training some people on how the new system works, and start finding a place to put it, and start integrating it, and start moving some stuff to it. But they know it's going to break. It's not ready for prime time, but they can start learning and start developing it. So all of the whole thing about release cycles is partially there to deal with uncertainty, besides just trying to make sure that it's stable. So that's one example, a common example of software development. So.
Thank you. Besides that, like right now, we have a lot of uncertainty. COVID, then economic challenge, then war, then natural disaster. What do you think? What will be the futures, and how we can overcome from too much of challenging situation?
Well, I think that one of the things that's really important is to, Bill, 1 second. Bill. Sorry, my cat wants to play with me right now, but I had to put her out of the room. Yeah, I mean, the world is an uncertain place, isn't it? So, I mean, what I was getting back in the beginning is realizing that certainty is an illusion. That at one level, we have to be honest with ourselves, which allows us to be more forgiving with ourselves and more forgiving with each other, because we're constantly hit by things that we don't expect, and we're going to make mistakes because we don't know what to do. I mean, it's not, if everything was certain, we get up in the morning. I mean, life would be incredibly boring, wouldn't it? You get up in the morning, you know exactly what you were going to do all day. You did exactly what you thought you were going to do all day. And then, you knew what you were going to do the next day. I mean, why even be alive, really? I mean, it's just like, you'd be like a machine. But fortunately, the world isn't like that. The world is full of uncertainty. And we have to acknowledge that, and acknowledge that there's this uncertainty, and find ways that we can work together so that we can, when unexpected things happen, we just say, okay, well, this is something that we need to deal with. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with climate change. All we can do is make best guesses. So it's similar to when you're doing a release cycle. You don't know when the software is actually going to get completely finished, or gone through all the releases so that it's pretty much bug free. All you can do is guess. So what we have to do is make our best guesses, and then not be mad at each other if the guesses don't work out, because we have to realize that they are just guesses. Nothing is really certain. And so I think that the most important thing is to embrace uncertainty and realize that everything is uncertain, and that we work together where we're all like, I don't know, IoT devices. We're all like sensors. And each of us can sense what's going on in our little place in the world, in the universe, and share it with other people. And because of that, we can work together, and start solving some of these problems.
So, like specifically, we are developing urban planning for different communities. So, what is your advice? How we can improve, especially
How,
especially
how
when.
do? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please continue. Yes, what's your
No, no.
point?
I was going to ask you. I was hoping you'd clarify the question. So please go on.
Yeah, actually, I want to know that World Talent Economy Forum, we are developing urban planning for different communities. So yes, we have lot of challenges and everything. What is your advice? Because Silicon Valley, I'm doing research, I find you have lot of good infrastructure, good example, which may be helpful for people from these communities. So how we can interact with this kind of innovations, or how it can be helpful for our community.
Well, I'm sorry. The Yeah. Well, we live in the world we live in. One of the things about uncertainty is that uncertainty that goes back to the idea of luck. Like what I was saying, that Steve Jobs was lucky and Wozniak were lucky to be in a place where they had the resources that they needed. And I think when you really look and you examine I know, in fact, when you really look and examine the people who've been that we attribute great inventions to and things like that, you'll find that that they were in the right place at the right time. And so we can't necessarily uh, replicate those things. In other words, that already happened. It's the past. We don't want to develop a community or a system to invent the PC. Why would we? I mean, the PC's already been invented. There's no. We're looking for what we can do for the new things we haven't even thought of yet. And that's one beauty of uncertainty is that things are going to happen that we don't even know what they are yet. And that's the one of the exciting things in life. I mean, uncertainty is great. I mean, it's all the new people that you're going to meet, all the new places you're going to go, all the new inventions that people are going to make, all of those things. So the question then gets to be is how can you set up a situation where to use uncertainty to your advantage? And the it's unfortunately it's not completely straightforward because I've spent a lot of time going around talking to people around the world who have communities that want to replicate Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley is famous as the kind of premier tech place in the world. And they're trying to replicate it in Austin. We have a person that's on this show a lot from Austin, and I just noticed the other day that Austin is a very, very distant second to Silicon Valley. Um, it's and how did Silicon Valley get that way? It wasn't by planning. It was basically really by accident. There was one brilliant thing, which is what Fred Terman did when he encouraged the business community in Palo Alto to take classes at Stanford, and and a lot of it had to do with military stuff that was going on because they were developing uh, basically originally it was an oscillator that Hewlett and Packard developed that was that Terman helped finance for them, and they developed it, and then but then they learned their business skills from Stanford Business School and so on like that, and it became there was feedback or give and take between the business community and Stanford, and so um, having an area where you're open to many communities together allows for what I was saying a little while ago about how like we're all like IoT devices, we're all like sensors. And so if you have a community in Silicon Valley, we have a very strong connection to India, for instance, very strong. I mean, there's lots of people from India, and they go back and forth all the time. And so if we want to outsource things to India, it's a piece of cake because we know, everybody knows how to do that. We have very strong relationships with all over the world. I mean, China, Europe, every place, because people from everywhere come to Silicon Valley. And so when we need information, we can get the information because somebody that knows what's really going on in the places that you want to talk to, and can make a connection for you. Because everything you're going to get through people. It's not like something that you build is just going to assemble itself. And it's not like anybody knows how to build every part of something. Like, it takes $10 billion to build a chip making factory. So you're not going to, everyone has to buy chips from the big giant companies that make the chips. But if you I mean, the formula seems to have worked the best everywhere. If you look at Boston, you look at Silicon Valley, you look at Austin, all of the places that are the most successful high-tech centers have have combined very, very good universities with business. And so, and then the universities attract people they have to be open and allow people from all over the place to come to those universities. And, people from China, people from Pakistan, people from everywhere can come to can go to Stanford and do. And that's kind of the key, because when things are uncertain, the only way that you can have any success is to be able to notice what's going on so that you can make real reasonable decisions, because you can't just imagine what things are going to be like and just make it happen. You have to actually be getting constant feedback from the environment.
Thank you. Professor Donald, what's your concluding remarks, and what is your advice for our audience, especially for the emerging economy?
Well, my most important advice is that when you want to accomplish something, you look at the goal that you have, and you be aware of the fact that you're going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to work the way you expect them to do. Whether you're an organization, whether you're an individual, whether you're a country, no matter who you are or what you're doing, things aren't going to turn out the way you expect them to. You're not going to get from here to there the way you expect. I mean, just you're driving somewhere and you find out that there's been an automobile accident, or a road's been washed out, or a road's closed, or something in any situation. You're going to find that there's unexpected things, and you're going to be able to deal with it. But the only way you're going to be able to deal with it is to not kid yourself, not have an illusion that things are the way that you expect them to be. You have to be open to the way things are, and not to the way you want things to be. So you can reorient yourself and head in the direction that you want to head by taking a different route, by doing all kinds of different things. And along the way, it's very possible that you might realize that that the direction that you were heading that is a wonderful direction, but that there it may be that if you took another road, another path, you might be able to find something that's even better. Um, the I had a venture capitalist friend tell me once that no company that he ever invested in wound up making what it was that they were um, originally formed to make. They always they always learned as they were working at it that there was another opportunity that was even better than the one that they were working on, and they switched. They pivoted to this better opportunity. So if uncertainty is like your enemy, like it makes you fearful and it makes you uncomfortable, and you feel that you have to master uncertainty and make uncertainty go away, you can't. And so all that'll happen is that you'll be unhappy. Your employees will be unhappy. If you've got a company, it'll just people will be start getting blamed for things. That when people go wrong, you blame somebody for something going wrong, and all those kinds of things. They hurt morale. They hurt everything. But if you understand that the world is uncertain, and you look at things and you say, I want to go to this place. I want to get a PhD. I want to start a company. I want to start an area in my country that's like Silicon Valley. I want to start a company. I want my company. Figure out what you want your company to do. Figure out who it's gonna who who it's gonna help and influence, and what you're going to do. But you don't know that. So what you have, that's why I've said in other kinds of things that you've got to tell your story to everybody that you can. So imagine the case of starting a company. If you tell you think you know what people want when you start the company, and you think what you're making is going to be this greatest thing for people, but you don't know until you ask them. And the more people you ask, the more people you're going to get feedback from, and the more certain you're going to become in that case. So you're never going to be 100% certain, but you can manage the uncertainty and use it to your advantage. Because if you do that, if you take the time to talk to people, you take the time to get feedback from your environment, then your competitors still have to do that in order to compete with you. And so that gives you a tremendous advantage. So if you're trying to start a company, if you're trying to create a region, a high tech region, you can go out and you can look at things like, you can say, well, having a good university and having good businesses and some various kinds of things, good networks and things like that those are characteristics of every successful high tech region. So we need to have those. But what else? Like, maybe that won't work. What do you need to, while you're doing, that's got to be okay. Because once you start doing something, you start getting feedback, and then you can start taking that feedback and using it to do things and make change. The one friend said, there's no failure, only feedback. And so I think that we all need to take that uncertainty is there. It's inevitable. It's part of the way the universe is made, and it's up to us to be able to be aware and use the feedback to do things that we really want to do, and accomplish things and make our lives better and those around us lives better.
Thank
That's
you.
my
Thank
conclusion.
you. Thank you, Professor Donalds. This is very, very interesting dialogue. And from this dialogue, we learn a lot. Specifically, World Talent Economy Forums, we are developing uh, entrepreneurs from emerging economy, because we learn from World Talent Economy Forums. If we can like develop new entrepreneurs, they can change their community through modern science, engineering, and technology. Uh, this is our audience. Regularly I get a lot of questions from our audience, from our speaker. Where is our audience? Actually, we do not run behind defined kind of social media platform. We do a lot of offline activities. We are engaging with 6 different cities in Bangladesh and India, and we are working with around 10 million peoples. And through this process, we can uplift the community, and I can share the good story of our success. Last 4 months, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs. This is the our successful entrepreneurs, those who successfully our entrepreneur programs, and financially they make success. It's not only they just learn. We have our products, we have our urban planning, we have our initiative, and they successfully finish our program, and they start their entrepreneurial journey. uh, we don't have big venture capital. We don't have big government support. We don't have big NGO or anything to support our communities. Uh, with our own hard works, we achieve it. And specifically, I want to give very, very, very uh, like good like wishes and thanks to all of our speakers, because those who continuously support World Talent Economy Forum. We are growing because of you people. We are learning because of you people. We are enhancing our capacity because of you people. So all of your contribution last 3 years, it's become very, very influential. It become big, and we have real people, real audience, and real human being who change human lives. Thank you, Professor Donald, for your continuous support. Let's make the new world with World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.